What would you do if a simple traffic stop turned into a drug investigation in the next 30 seconds? Because that shift happens fast, and most drivers miss the warning signs until it is too late. One wrong answer can turn a warning into a search, a frisk, or handcuffs. Hit subscribe right now because what I am about to show you could save you from giving away your rights when the pressure hits. Like this video too, because you will not remember these lines unless you hear them now. Here is the reality. A stop usually starts over something small, a lane change, a broken light 5 miles over, but the real danger is not the reason you got pulled over. The real danger is the moment the stop changes from traffic business into fishing for evidence. That is when officers stop focusing on the ticket and start looking for a reason to search you. They might question you harder, separate you, or hold you longer. In this video, you're going to learn 10 red flags that mean that shift is happening. You're going to hear the exact sentence that checks whether you are free to go. You're going to learn the one line that blocks consent searches. You're also going to see why stepping out of the car is not the fight to pick, but talking too much absolutely is. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings, and former police officers have confirmed this works. Most people have no idea how fast they talk themselves into trouble. You get nervous. You want to seem nice. You think being extra friendly will make it easier. So you start filling the silence. You explain where you were. You explain why you look tired. You explain why your backpack is in the back seat. Then the officer hears one thing that sounds off. And now you are not in a traffic stop anymore. Now you are in an investigation. Let me show you exactly where that change starts. It starts when the questions stop being about the traffic issue and start being about your life, your plans, your car, your passengers, or what might be inside. You do not need to be rude. You do not need to argue. You just need to recognize the red flags early and answer the right way before the stop grows teeth. The first thing you need to spot is the stall. Red flag number 1 is when the officer gives back your license or seems done, but keeps talking. Red flag number 2 is when the questions suddenly shift into where you are coming from, where you're going, how long you were there, and why your story sounds different from your passengers. Red flag number 3 is when you hear words like, hang tight, give me a minute, or sit tight while I check one more thing. That is the moment a normal stop may be stretching into something bigger. Here is exactly what you say. Officer, are you still working the traffic stop, or am I free to leave? Word for word. Memorize that line. It is calm, it is respectful, and it forces the moment into the open. If the officer says you are free to leave, the stop should end. If the officer says no, then you know the stop is still active and you stop volunteering information. Why does that line work? Because it checks the clock. A traffic stop is supposed to be about the mission of the stop. License, registration, insurance, ticket, or warning. That is it. In Rodriguez versus United States, the Supreme Court said police cannot drag out a completed stop. They cannot delay just to do a dog sniff unless they have a real reason, not just a hunch. In plain English, once the traffic business is done, the stop is supposed to end. Unless they can point to something more. This is 100% legal. You're not resisting. You're not being difficult. You're asking the cleanest question possible. Watch what happens when drivers miss this. Bad way. Most drivers say, sure, no problem, what else do you need? Then the stop keeps rolling, the questions keep coming, and the officer gets more chances to build suspicion. Good way. Smart drivers say, officer, are you still working the traffic stop, or am I free to leave? Then the officer has to either end the stop or clearly own the delay. That matters more than you think. If you keep chatting after the ticket work is over, you hand the officer fresh material. Nervous voice, changing answers, strange timeline, long pause. All of that can be used to justify keeping you longer. But if you ask the freedom question early, you shrink the space where that happens. Former police officers have confirmed this works because it changes the feel of the stop. It tells the officer, you know the stop has limits. Now, if the officer says you're not free to leave, do not argue on the roadside. Do not say you know your rights in a loud voice. Just stop feeding the stop. Hand over required documents if needed. Stay polite. And get ready for the next red flag because it comes right after this one in body cam after body cam. That is the consent request. And if you miss it, everything inside your car may become fair game. Still watching? Good. Have you ever heard an officer say just hang tight for a minute or ask where you were coming from 3 different ways? Drop a comment below because that is the exact moment most stops start getting worse. Now let us hit the red flags that trap almost everybody. Red flag number 4 is when the officer makes the search sound casual. You mind if I take a quick look? You don't have anything illegal, right? Red flag number 5 is when the officer tries to make honesty sound like a deal. Be straight with me and I'll work with you. Red flag number 6 is when another unit or a dog suddenly gets mentioned after the traffic part is basically over. Here's the trick they do not want you knowing. They do not need you to confess. They need you to open the door for them. You look at the officer and say this, Officer, I do not consent to any searches. Those exact 8 words. Say them once. Say them clearly, then stop talking. Defense attorneys use this exact line in court because it removes all the fuzzy gray area. No maybe, no nervous laugh, no half yes. Just a clean refusal. Why is this so powerful? Because consent is the shortcut. If you say yes, you make the fight much harder later. Officers know that. That is why the request sounds friendly. It sounds tiny. It sounds like refusing would make you look guilty. But rights do not work that way. You do not lose your rights because you choose to use them. Legal experts agree this is your strongest protection during a roadside fishing trip. Bad way. Most drivers say, I guess if you want to, or I've got nothing to hide. Then the officer searches the car, opens bags, checks the trunk, and finds anything that can be used against you. Good way. Smart drivers say, Officer, I do not consent to any searches. Then the officer either needs lawful grounds without your permission or the search does not happen. This is 100% legal. And yes, an officer may still search if they claim they already have legal grounds. But your refusal still matters. It keeps you from helping the search happen. It keeps the record clear. In Ohio versus Robinette, the Supreme Court made clear that officers do not always have to tell you that you are free to go. In plain English, they can ask while the pressure is still on. That is exactly why your answer matters so much. If you wait until after the search starts, you waited too long. Watch what happens when the officer says, if you've got nothing to hide, why not let me look? That line is bait. The goal is to make you feel like privacy means guilt. It does not. Your car is private space. Your bags are private space. Your refusal is not proof of a crime. It is just refusal. And one more thing. If the officer asks about weed, guns, cash, drugs, or anything illegal, that is not small talk. That is a setup. They are testing your answers, your face, your hands, your timing, and your story. So keep it simple. Your best move is the same every time. Officer, I do not consent to any searches. Then be quiet. The next shift gets even more serious because now we are talking about your body, your movement, and your passengers. Red flag. Number 7 is when the officer orders you out of the car. Red flag number 8 is when the officer pulls your passenger out too, or separates you. This is where people make a huge mistake. They think the smart move is refusing to step out. It is not. If the stop is lawful, officers can usually order the driver out. That comes from Pennsylvania versus Mims. In plain English, the court said officer safety beats the small hassle of stepping out of the car. So here is exactly what you say. Officer, I will step out, but I do not consent to any searches, and I choose to remain silent. Word for word. That line does 3 things at once. It shows compliance, it blocks consent, and it stops you from talking your way into deeper trouble. Let me show you exactly why this works. The officer may have legal power to control where you stand during the stop, but that does not mean you have to answer every question while standing there. If they start asking about weapons, drugs, cash, who owns the car, why your friend looks nervous, or what is in your pockets, the stop is heating up. Arizona v. Johnson says an officer can frisk a person during a traffic stop if the officer reasonably thinks that person is armed and dangerous. In plain English, they need a safety reason, not just curiosity. That means your goal is not to fight the movement order. Your goal is to avoid giving them more to work with. Bad way. Most drivers say, why do I have to get out? I didn't do anything. Then the stop gets tense, the officer gets more suspicious, and every move looks worse. Good way. Smart drivers say, Officer, I will step out, but I do not consent to any searches, and I choose to remain silent. Then you comply, stay calm, and stop feeding the investigation. Listen closely because this is critical. Once you are outside the car, every extra word can become a reason to go further. A shaky answer can become nervous behavior. A joke can become inconsistency. A reach toward your waistband can become a safety concern. That is why silence matters so much here. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings about what officers can do during stops and when they can frisk. Your calm behavior protects you better than roadside arguing ever will. And if there's a passenger with you, tell them ahead of time to do the same. No sudden moves, no debates, no trying to explain everything. Because once officers separate people, they often compare answers. That is the whole point. They want cracks in the story. They want one person saying dinner and the other saying a party. They want one timeline to miss the other by 20 minutes. So if the stop shifts here, your best defense is short, respectful, and quiet. 90% of drivers do not know what is coming next. If you're still here, you're already ahead of almost everybody. Drop a comment saying I am still here because the last 2 red flags are the ones people never spot until it is too late. The final pair of red flags is more subtle, and that is why they work so well. Red flag number 9 is when the officer starts repeating the same question. Where are you headed? So that is your cousin's house? How long were you there again? Red flag number 10 is when the officer acts like silence is suspicious. Why are you so nervous? Why won't you answer? If you have got nothing to hide, just be honest. That is pressure, not proof. Pressure. Here is exactly what you say. I choose to remain silent, and I do not answer investigative questions. If the stop is clearly turning criminal, add this. I want a lawyer if you are accusing me of a crime. Keep your voice steady. Keep your hands visible. Then stop. Why does this matter? Because repeated questions are designed to create mistakes, not truth. Mistakes. People under stress change tiny details. They mix up times. They guess. They over-explain. Then the officer writes down inconsistent statements. Bad way. Most drivers say, I already told you, I'm just coming from my friend's place. I mean my cousin's place. We were there like 2 hours. Then the officer hears a shifting story and the stop gets worse. Good way. Smart drivers say, I choose to remain silent and I do not answer investigative questions. Then there is no fresh statement to twist. Here is the reality. Silence feels awkward in the moment, but it is often the safest move. Brendan v. California also matters here because the Supreme Court said passengers are seized to during a traffic stop. In plain English, your passenger is in the stop with you. That means officers may question both of you and use both to build suspicion. So the rule is simple. The more the stop shifts away from the traffic issue, the less you should say. Now let us lock the law together. Rodriguez v. United States says police cannot stretch a finished traffic stop just to investigate more unless they have a real reason. Pennsylvania v. Mims says they can order the driver out during a lawful stop, so do not turn that into the battle. Arizona v. Johnson says they can frisk if they reasonably think someone is armed and dangerous, which means your calm behavior matters. Ohio v. Robinette shows officers may ask for consent even while the pressure is still on, so your refusal has to be clear. Brendan v. California says passengers count too, so the whole car needs to stay disciplined. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings. Put all that together, and the playbook gets simple. If the stop drags, ask if you are free to leave. If they ask to search, refuse consent. If they order you out, comply but stay silent. If they start fishing, stop talking. Let me show you exactly how this plays out in real life. You get pulled over for a rolling stop. The officer takes your license and insurance. So far, normal. Then comes the wrong way. You start chatting. You say you are headed home from dinner. Your passenger says you were at a friend's place watching the game. The officer says, just hang tight. Then he asks if there's anything illegal in the car. You laugh and say, no, go ahead and look. I've got nothing to hide. He asks you to step out. You argue. Now the stop feels tense. A second officer shows up. Your passenger gets pulled out too. Bags get opened. Pockets get checked. Now watch what happens the right way. Same stop. Same officer. Same rolling stop. You hand over documents and stay quiet. The officer starts the extra questions. You say, officer, are you still working the traffic stop, or am I free to leave? He keeps you there. He asks to search. You say, officer, I do not consent to any searches. He orders you out. You say, officer, I will step out, but I do not consent and choose to remain silent. Your passenger does the same. No arguing, no extra story, no nervous babbling, no consent, no contradictions. This protects the record. It protects your rights. Next video, I'm revealing what to say when cops claim they smell weed. Subscribe now. When the stop drags, that is your warning. When search questions come, that is the trap. Comply with movement, but stay silent and stay safe out there. See 2026 Script Scene Splitter AI GitHub.